Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back and I love Mario. Mario has been one of the biggest franchises over all of gaming. Mario and video games go hand in hand. And honestly, my love of Mario can go all the way back to the original game Super Mario Bros. On the NES that released in 1985. Even if I wasn't alive when it came out. Yeah, that's right, I wasn't born then. The first way I played this game was on my Wii. I know, I'm cool. That's why I own too many copies of this game. The thing is, I've never completed this game. Well, properly, anyway. I've always used either save states or the rewind feature or something along those lines in order to fake myself completing this game. So I thought, why don't I actually play through every single level of the game and give this game a fair shot? Nintendo struck gold. Mario Bros was the newest arcade game by Nintendo, but there was a huge problem. It was stuck at the arcade. Of course, you could play this game on the Atari 2600, but I think the world would like to forget that it was ever on the Atari. What the Nintendo probably should have control over their Mario games. See, with the Atari port of Mario Bros, the game had almost nothing to do with Nintendo. Video games are really weird at this point in time. Luckily, Nintendo this year were also releasing their own home console, the very first one they'd ever made if you ignore the other consoles from before this. All they do is play Pong! Their new console was the Famicom. The Famicom was the brand new way to play video games at home. No other console had done anything like this. However, this was only released in Japan. Nintendo didn't really have a stake outside of Japan, with video games being in an almost dire state outside of the country. In the US, Atari killed the video game industry with release after release of some of the most horrible video games ever created, and people were getting sick of playing trash after trash. Legend goes that the peak of these horrendous games was a tie-in game for the movie E.T. This game was rushed and nobody liked it at all. Copies were destroyed and buried just so no one would ever have to play this game. And video games seemed like a completely dead genre at home. Of course, the arcade was still a thriving business, but at home, consoles could never build up to the hype of what we had at the arcade. Back in Japan, Nintendo were trying to figure out a way to release their Famicom worldwide. But with this video game crash in the US, Nintendo knew they had to change something. So they waited 2 years and made it look like a VHS player. Alongside the release of this brand new Nintendo Entertainment System, they released Super Mario Bros., taking the characters from the popular Mario Bros. And created what can only be described as the best video game of all time. The best video game at the time. What do you think it has to compete with? Pong? World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Is the most iconic levels in all of gaming. It is a pretty simple goal, to introduce the player to the game as fast as possible. The level opens with the Goomba walking toward you, and a power-up being close by for you to get. Now, despite this level's ease for more veteran players of any video game ever, this level in 1985 would have been a challenge to understand. There's no tutorial telling you the controls, assuming you didn't read the instruction manual. You're just straight into the game. Mario has that classic red and brown design, the sky is blue, everything is normal, everything is great. Wait, Mario's red and brown? Last time I checked, isn't his overalls blue? Well, there are a few reasons as to why this looks different. Firstly, this was still at the point where Mario's overalls and his shirt had the reverse colours, but even then, that doesn't explain the brown, does it? This was most likely done due to the sky being blue, with Mario at the time not having an outline around him, which would have made his overalls be pretty hard to see compared to the sky. You just gotta get used to this weirdo NES stuff when playing Super Mario Bros. 1-1 has a secret 1-up after all the pipes, pretty much the go-to secret for this level, with a pipe close by that will take you all the way to the end of the stage. Of course, this stage also has the famous hidden star, which is your first introduction to the power-up in the series. But the level ends with a simple hill up to the flagpole, for you to jump on it and finish the level. 1-2 is where things get interesting. Unlike 1-1, which is an overworld look, 1-2 transitions from the overworld into the underground. This theme is more blue than anything else, and is the underground of the Mushroom Kingdom. It introduces these platforms to jump on, different types of Koopa Troopers, piranha plants, and more, but we'll get to that later. Super Mario Bros. Released on several different consoles, with its first re-release being on the Super Nintendo, where the graphics are upgraded and the game is just worse. Look, I'm sorry, I just prefer the original Super Mario Bros. Over the Super Mario Bros. All-Star version of Super Mario Bros. Super Mario All-Stars also has some weird design choices throughout the game. In each level, there's a bonus section, just like there is in the original, but for some reason in this version, Mario's massive head is just sitting in the background like he's the one above all. But no matter, this was technically the best way to play the original game.
but the game is still as basic as ever. However, 1-3 is where things get more challenging.
There's a sky now?
Of course there's still power-ups, but this is where some people probably dip out of the game. It's just too difficult.
Is what I said before figuring out how to skip this level.
That's right, in the level before this, there's actually these things called warp zones. With these you can skip to World 2, World 3, or World 4. Of course, I have no idea why you would pick anything you want, but sometimes you just have a hankering for World 3, and I get that. World 1-4 is the first castle level. That's right, this is the final level. Each world has 4 levels in it, leading to a total of 32 levels in the game. The castle introduces lava, fire bars, and the big bad Bowser. Or I guess this isn't Bowser. See, a glitch in this game had Bowser from every world except for 8 dying as an enemy found throughout the game. So Nintendo eventually confirmed that this wasn't Bowser and was instead a clone.
Early Mario had a lot of weird things like this, like Bowser's brother in Super Mario Bros. 2, his overalls, Luigi.
Once you defeat the big bad, you discover, hey, it's just this Toad. Who cares about Toad? World 2 of Super Mario Bros. World 2 is more of the same, being the overworld, ending in a castle, pretty much the same, but let's see what the second level has to bring.
Holy sh**.
World 2-2 introduces water to Super Mario Bros. With all new enemies, new gimmicks, everything. Having calming music, random fish, bubbles that push you. Everything is here to set up the future of platforming video games forever. What a revolutionary video game this is. That's why they made a PC port. Yeah, in 1986, Nintendo got Hudson Soft, the guys who went on to create Mario Party, to create Super Mario Bros. Special to release on Japanese computers. Super Mario Bros. Special was originally seen as a PC port of the original game, but with some of the worst graphics ever seen. But it ends up being its own game, almost being a sequel to Super Mario Bros. It has brand new levels, brand new power-ups, and builds upon what was put in the original game. It's a really cool experience, except that isn't what it normally looks like. As this game was made for PCs in 1986, the game is one of the slowest and worst playing Mario games ever released. The game was a good concept, but I think there are much better ways of playing the original Super Mario Bros., such as the arcade. Not only was Super Mario Bros. Available in PlayChoice 10 arcade machines in arcades, Nintendo also made a special version of the game called Versus Super Mario Bros. That took the original levels they created and turned it into a harder game to play. Of course, if you're at the arcade, you're not just going to go through the entire game and play it all at once. The idea is that this game just wants your money. But Versus Super Mario Bros. Helped Nintendo inspire the sequel Super Mario Bros. 2. Super Mario Bros. 2, or as we know it in the West, Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels, takes the original Super Mario Bros. And just makes it harder. Some of the levels come straight from Versus Super Mario Bros., but the rest is just original. This game introduces the Poison Mushroom. No, it's not helpful, but it's a new challenge to the game. It also introduces wind, bigger trampolines, and many other things to make the game harder and better than the original.
Except Nintendo of America didn't think so.
Nintendo of America saw Super Mario Bros. 2 and thought the game was too hard and decided to scrap the release and go into the archives of Nintendo of Japan and reskin a game known as Doki Doki Panic and make it into our version of Super Mario Bros. 2. This Super Mario Bros. 2 introduced many different things to Mario as well, such as Shy Guys, Peach's Float, Toad running fast, the idea of Luigi being taller. Many things in Super Mario Bros. 2, the American version, became Mario staples. How fun! Of course, due to Super Mario Bros. 2 not being a Mario game, it removed a lot of the things that the original Super Mario Bros. Had, such as Goombas, mushrooms, fire flowers. But for being a second game, I think this is welcome. The Legend of Zelda does the same thing, with Zelda 2 being almost a completely different type of video game compared to the first one. However, the world came back together to release Super Mario Bros. 3, and have it be the same version everywhere. Super Mario Bros. 3 returned to the normal Mario platforming, which became the basis of the Mario franchise from then on. Back to Super Mario Bros., World 2-3 has Mario running across a bridge, dodging the fish that try to kill you from the level earlier. It shows that all of these levels are connected, even if it doesn't really feel like it at this point in time. But it all ends in another castle. The castle is pretty much the same as the previous castle, with a few more platforming challenges, making for an overall more difficult castle than before. But it's pretty much the same thing we're all used to. Dodge lava, run to the end, fight
Bowser,
and save another Toad. Pretty simple game. World 3 introduces us to a different time of day. Night. as well as introducing snow. Each tree is white instead of green, which was meant to depict snow.
At least that's what I saw.
However, it is pretty much more of the same, with not much really changing throughout World 3.
I know some of you freaks skipped here, didn't you?
In 3.3, it's possible to jump over the flagpole, but I honestly don't know why you would want to do that. 3.4 is pretty much the same as the other castles, except the
Bowser
fight is ever so slightly harder, with massive chunks of bricks being in the way when you want to jump over
Bowser.
Otherwise, it's a pretty simple castle, all things considered. Super Mario Bros. Was also ported to many random places, with the most significant being Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color. This version of the game added a world map, added Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, and challenges. This is known as the best version of Super Mario Bros. That has ever released, but there's one giant problem.
Or should I say tiny problem?
The screen crunch. It's very hard to see the majority of the game itself, but it's an interesting way to play the game. Or you could play it on the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance version of Super Mario Bros. Is just Super Mario Bros. Nothing interesting about it. World 4 is more of the same, with Lakitu being here too. The castle is where things get interesting. The castle is a puzzle level where you have to walk specific ways to complete the level. This would normally take a lot of trial and error, making this level technically the longest one in the entire game.
Because it's infinite.
This idea would later be reused in future Mario games, such as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels and New Super Mario Bros. Wii. But it's pretty easy to tell which way to go. But it's still a unique way of playing the castle before you go to fight
Bowser.
World 5 and 6 are the same old, with you being able to skip them in World 4 2 through multiple warp zones in case you were interested. At this point in time, we've been introduced to every single type of level that we're going to see throughout the game, so I wouldn't be expecting anything unique in World 5 or World 6. Anyway, let's try World 5-3.
Wait, that's just 1-3 again!
World 5-3 is exactly the same as World 1-3, but the only difference being that there's bullet bills flying at you the entire time. Otherwise, it's literally just the same damn thing. This isn't the only time it happens either. World 5-4 is probably the same as one of the other castles, and World 6-4 is the World 1 castle, with no differences except for
Bowser
throwing hammers at you the entire time. What the hell is happening? Oh well, thank God World 7-1 is different. World 7 has more and more bullet bills leading up to the end of the game. If you were a weirdo, you would have skipped here.
There is literally no reason to skip here, so why even give the option? Would you rather skip to World 7 or World 8? Like, what's the point of skipping to World 7?
Let me just try World 7-2 then.
Wait, that's just 2-2 again!
World 7-2 is exactly the same as 2-2, with no differences at all. Funnily enough, this level is repeated again in the Minus World. The Minus World is a glitched level that you can access all the way back in World 1-2, but you can't complete it. The Famicom Disk System version of the game has unique Minus World levels, but these levels weren't ever meant to be played. 7-3 follows 7-2, so let's see what this one is.
Wait, that's just 2...
Yep, that's right, 7-3 is just the same as 2-3. I have no idea why there are so many repeating levels. I couldn't find an answer. Just people disappointed, but at least it gets us out to finally talk about World 8. World 8-1. This one has a lot of pipes. That's pretty much all I can say. Why don't we take this time out to try Super Mario All-Stars on the Wii? See, on Mario's 25th anniversary, Nintendo released Super Mario All-Stars, a compilation of Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3. What a collection. Let's have a look at the brand new Wii versions of these games.
Wait, that's just Super Mario All-Stars again!
Nintendo decided that for the 25th anniversary, they'd just do Super Mario All-Stars, but again, it's just a ROM of the original, but put on a Wii. Nintendo already had a way of doing this called the Virtual Console. At least with Super Mario 3D All-Stars on the Nintendo Switch, they actually changed a few things in the game and made it HD. This is just lazy!
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pissed.
World 8-2, this one sucks. This takes Lakitu and combines it with bullet bills to create the stupidest level ever invented. There's a secret 1-up, that's probably the coolest thing. There's also this death trap where the gap is way too far to jump over. Who designed this? What's up with you, Nintendo? World 8-3 also sucks. There's just a lot of Hammer Bros in these giant empty spaces with castle walls around. I always get stuck on this level and I have no idea why. But this level leads to the big finale of the game. World 8-4.
It's just a lot of pipes.
World 8-4 is a puzzle. a challenge. Really need to think about where you're going to beat this one. This level, although the final level, is probably the easiest of World 8. You just need to remember the order of the pipes that you go in. For some reason, there's an underwater section. No idea why, but it's there. You finally get up to the real Bowser, the first time in this entire game, and you now have your chance to do the unthinkable. You defeat him the same way you do every other
Bowser,
by jumping over him and touching the axe. Once you touch the axe, you win. And this is when you finally meet the person you've been saving this whole time, Princess Toadstool.
She wasn't called Princess Peach yet. I mean, technically, in Japan she was, but outside of Japan, who the hell is that?
And then she introduces you to a harder version of the game, which all it does is replace Goombas with these weirdo things.
And it makes some platforms smaller, can't forget that.
Super Mario Bros. Went on to be packed in with the NES, becoming one of the highest selling games of all time, and spawned sequel after sequel. Mario became one of the most recognizable characters to ever exist, and Super Mario Bros. Was re-released 100,000 times. Funnily enough, the only console that you can't play Super Mario Bros. On that's released by Nintendo is the Nintendo 64 and original DS. Super Mario Bros. Was released in many places, such as the NES, the Famicom Disk System, the Versus Arcade Machine, the Game & Watch, although technically that's just a different game with the same title, the Nintendo Play Choice 10 arcade machines, the Famicom Disk System again is All Night Nippon Super Mario Bros., many compilation cartridges on the NES, the SNES but with the Super Mario World, the Teleview, the Game Boy Color, and Animal Crossing in Japan but only was available as a competition prize and was completely unused in the worldwide release but then was removed from the upgrade to the Japanese version of Animal Crossing, but also is in the original version of the game on Nintendo 64, on the Game Boy Advance, on the Wii Virtual Console, in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, on the Wii again, on the Wii Virtual Console again, but the question mark block is replaced with the number 25 on the block, on the 3DS Virtual Console, on the Wii U Virtual Console, in NES Remix, as Super Luigi Bros. In NES Remix 2, in Ultimate NES Remix as Speed Mario Bros., in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, in Amiibo Tap, on the NES Classic and the Famicom Classic, on Switch Online, as Super Mario Bros. 35, which no longer exists, and on the new Game & Watch.
Can you tell I like this game?
It's safe to say that Super Mario Bros. Left an impact on the world that's still unraveling to this day. Without it, we wouldn't have games like Sonic, Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Uncharted, BioShock, Halo, or even Wii Music. But going back to it, I don't think I can look at it that fondly. It's cool, yes, but comparing it to Super Mario Bros. 3 or World, I think it's one of the worst mainline Mario games ever!
Unless you include Super Mario Bros. Special. Hi, I'm Charlie and back and I've played the Forbidden Mario game.
In 1985, Nintendo released Super Mario Bros. For the NES and the Famicom, but that's not where this story ends. Nintendo at this point in their life had been licensing out a few of their characters and arcade games to other companies, such as Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. to Coleco and Mario Bros. To the Atari for consoles, but they also felt that they needed to get into the PC market. Some of their games had been released on Japanese computers, such as Mario Bros. Special, Punchball Mario Bros. And a sequel to Donkey Kong 3 that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, and all of these games were developed by a company known as Hudson Soft. After the release of Super Mario Bros., Hudson and Nintendo came to an agreement to release a port of Super Mario Bros. To Japanese computers by the name of Super Mario Bros. Special. However, as development went further into this port, Hudson realized that they would need to create their own version of Super Mario Bros., as the PC could not handle the NES original. So instead, they made their own game, basically being a sequel to the first Super Mario Bros. Now, of course, because the game is on PC, it looks like this.
What the was that?
But luckily, fans of Mario have made ROM hacks and other fun ways of playing Super Mario Bros. Special and making it actually playable. So I decided to check out the Super Mario Bros. Special 35 anniversary hack made for the original Super Mario Bros. On the Nintendo Entertainment System. World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Special is very similar to the original World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Of course, there's a lot less stuff in this PC game. Just a few question mark blocks, a few Koopa Troopers, Goombas, but this level is actually very different. You'll also notice that the colors are different.
No!
But the level being an introduction to Super Mario Bros. Pretty much stays the same throughout the level, and that repeating nature repeats throughout World 1 of Super Mario Bros. Special itself. Each level is really just a new interpretation of the original World 1 levels. One unique thing about World 1 too is that the entire level isn't just underground. Instead, it has both an underground section and an overworld section, with the underground just being the main focus of the level, with the overworld kind of just being this little extra thing. Otherwise, World 1.3 and World 1.4 are just new versions of pre-existing levels and themes, with 1.4 almost being identical, just with the fire bars in different locations. World 2 also follows this same principle, although to a much more obvious degree. World 2.1 is overworld, World 2.2 is underwater, World 2.3 is overworld but on a bridge, and World 2.4 is obviously a castle.
No way!
However, 2.3 starts to show the wacky side of Super Mario Bros. Special with the level ending underground instead of the overworld, which never happened in the original game at all. It's quite a unique thing, but you start to question why there's a castle underground, but I guess that doesn't matter. At the end of the castle, you of course fight
Bowser
and continue on your merry way. World 3 is where things get wacky. The first level is actually an underwater level, very similar to World 2.2, but this time it also combines the idea of World 2.3 with the bridges with fish jumping out of the water. It's quite a unique level that is completely different to what you would see in the base game, really showing that Hudson Soft wanted to make something different. You'll also notice taller trees, more invisible blocks, but the level itself is just pretty empty. But you know what? This is fine. This is kind of just like the real Lost levels, and what should have been Super Mario Bros. 2, instead of the two other versions that we got. Of course, I mean this NES ROM hack. The original version of this game should never really be considered anything. World 3.2 introduces a fun glitch. You can get soft-locked. It's kind of annoying, but that's the PC jank you get. Other than that, World 3.2 has two mushrooms right next to each other, which is something that you never see in Mario games, and also the introduction of a brand new theme, one that's not seen in the base game at all.
Autumn. Or fall, if that's what you want to call it.
Yes, after you enter the pipe, you somehow travel to a different place where it's daytime again and everything is orange. This theme repeats throughout the game sometimes, but it's very interesting that it's here at all. World 3.3 is basically identical to World 1.3 of both this game and the original game, so there's not much to note here. It's just that half the level takes place underground for some reason. I guess that's unique. Here you can find a little pathway set up for a 1-up so it can get to you. Well, it was fun to try. The castle is once again more of the same, except this time introducing two things to Super Mario Bros. Being the barrels from Donkey Kong, which just like in Donkey Kong you have to jump over, and the hammer from Donkey Kong, which is the only thing that will allow you to destroy the barrels. A lot of elements from the arcade games made its way into Super Mario Bros. Special, most likely due to Hudson Soft also working on the PC ports of both Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong. World 4 returns to the similarities of the original game, with World 4.1 introducing Lakitu. However, there's another new power-up in this game, something never seen before: the wing. The wing, just like any other Mario flying power, lets you fly. However, due to this game being really janky, really all it does is allow you to look like you're swimming in the air for a little bit. It's a bit unique, but it doesn't compare to what's coming. World 4.2 introduces multiple elements from the arcade game Mario Bros., being ice that can fall down and kill you, and the crabs. They work the same way as they do in the arcade games, just making it so you can't jump on the crabs, but they're pretty fun additions to the game. There wasn't much past Mario games to take things from, so the fact that they took it from Mario Bros is actually really cool. World 4.3 does more with the mushroom platforms, and World 4.4 is your standard run-of-the-mill castle. Not much to add here. World 5 introduces those bugs from Mario Bros, just like in the arcade game, and they're just as annoying here. It also introduces bloopers to the overworld, alongside some of the cool things from underwater levels being in the overworld, alongside platforming on these smiling clouds, but otherwise it's just your standard Mario level. A lot of these levels seem like there could have been levels in Super Mario Maker, as they're full of some of the most random things you'll ever see in a Mario game in no random order and with no logic. Then World 5.3 and World 5.4 just seemingly repeat other levels from earlier in this game.
Well, that's just great.
World 6 does more with Lakitu and more Mario Maker type levels, with question mark blocks being everywhere. But World 6-2 has this weird thing where the bonus underground section is actually in the overworld theme, despite very clearly being an underground bonus world. World 6-3 once again does the sky theme, but this time makes all of the platforms out of snow, which adds a bit of uniqueness to this level, but it's just the same old same old. This game isn't really that difficult, all things considered, it's just different. Comparing it to the other Mario games shouldn't really count, as this thing is its own beast. It would have been fantastic to see this on an actual NES, but I understand why it stayed on Japanese computers. It's also annoying that Nintendo have never re-released this game, or ever even acknowledged its existence. World 7 is more of the same, so I think it's time to talk about everything else I got added to this game. All of these additions are really cool additions, to be honest. I would love to see things like the hammer appear in the Mario games now. The rest of World 7 is pretty mundane, all things considered. It's when we get to World 8 that things are different.
I lied.
World 8-1 is very different, yes, with the mushroom platforms and all that, and the beginning of World 8-2 is cool with it being underwater, but then World 8-2 is pretty much the same as World 8-3 from Super Mario Bros. Everyone say it with me.
Big castle walls with annoying hammer bros with random platforming in the middle of nothing.
This is then followed by World 8-3, which is pretty much the same as one of the earlier castles, but they put the castle in the underground theme instead, which is kind of weird. The World 8 castle is actually one of the easiest castles in the entire game. It's just really long. It's a lot of jumps of faith, followed by jumps into pipes. Pretty simple if you ask me, but it's still somewhat fun compared to the original Super Mario Bros. I don't know if I've just played the original game that many times, but I really like how, although this just takes elements from the original Super Mario Bros. And a few of the other games that are in the Mario universe, they managed to make something different, something unique. It really feels like a sequel to Super Mario and I'm done. You save Peach, but instead of giving you a new challenge, she just says how fantastic you are. Thanks Peach, I really needed that. Overall, Super Mario Bros. Special is a fun, special version of Super Mario Bros., but I think the game would have been a lot more interesting if it actually released on the NES instead of the PC. It's quite a unique game, so if you're ever looking for another NES Mario game to play, you should try out this ROM hack. It's great.
So I wonder if there's a special version of me. That's better. Hi, I'm Charlie, I'm back, and I'm annoyed. I recently was looking at my December calendar, and it says today I have to talk about Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. I hate Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. I always have. Why would Nintendo make this awful thing? Why would Nintendo do this to me?
Super Mario Bros. 2, otherwise known as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, is the only Japanese exclusive mainline Mario game because Americans found it too hard. Super Mario Bros. 2 was developed as a harder version of the original game, inspired by the arcade game vs. Super Mario Bros., an arcade exclusive version of Super Mario Bros. That was developed to be a bit harder due to the nature of it being an arcade game. Normally, arcade games are made hard to entice the player to keep putting quarters in, so the arcade company can rake in their cash. And Vs. Super Mario Bros., alongside the rest of the Vs. games, were made the same way. Funnily enough, 6 levels from the arcade game were actually in Lost Levels, as the developers just had so much fun developing the arcade game. And with no time to develop the game while also working on The Legend of Zelda, some things needed to be this way. Super Mario Bros. 2 was released for the Famicom Disk System, the brand new add-on for the Famicom, where you can use these special type of floppy disks that aren't floppy disks, as they don't flop, and play better games with more space and better sound. Of course, Super Mario Bros. 2 doesn't really take advantage of this, but games like The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and more took advantage of the sound it could produce, as both of these games originally released on the Famicom Disk System before being ported to real cartridges. However, Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't so lucky. Super Mario Bros. Was stuck in the Famicom Disk System, and the game never came out outside of Japan. When the game was sent over to America, the tester at the time thought the game was way too hard to release. And he couldn't believe that Japan would ever make this game. It's just way too hard. But by this time, Japan was already working on Super Mario Bros. 3. So Nintendo of America needed a Super Mario Bros. 2.
You can't just release Super Mario Bros. 3 without Super Mario Bros. 2. What is this, Final Fantasy?
So it was on. Nintendo of America was on the search for Super Mario Bros. 2 without making a new game, because Japan already had their game, so there's no need to develop a new one. But then luckily, and seemingly out of the blue, Nintendo discovered a game that they could reskin to create the American Super Mario Bros. 2, but that's a story for another day. Eventually, the rest of the world got the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, but we had a brand new name for it. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels.
Or Super Mario Bros. For super players if you're feeling frisky.
So what makes this game different compared to the original game? Nothing.
Well, not nothing.
Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels begins with a very similar World 1, with only one difference. One that doesn't really add anything. The Poison Mushroom. The Poison Mushroom does one thing, kill you in the same way a Goomba does. It's something that you don't really notice as there's not enough of them throughout the game for it to actually be a challenge, but it makes the game a little harder. What actually makes the game harder?
All the horrible jumps and the insane amount of enemies.
Every stage has some stupid part of the level thrown in. Every level is harder than the last. Everything is just wrong. This game, instead of feeling like its own game, feels like it's just the first Super Mario Bros. With a new coat of paint on it, which is fine for other games like Super Mario Bros. Special, as it was bringing the game to a whole new place to play, but for this, it just feels lazy. This game feels like it's punishing you for playing it. There's so many random death traps hidden throughout this game that you would never notice, and you know the whole warp zone thing from the original game? In this game, if you use warp zones, you'll never be able to 100% the game. Tough luck, you gotta play every single level in the entire game. World 1 follows the same themes as World 1 of the original game, with the only real difference being that some of the graphics look different, but overall it really is just the same game. That becomes even more apparent in the Super Mario All-Stars version of the game, where both Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels use the same graphics for both, making both of them seem as if they're just two parts of one whole game.
And that's what it feels like. This isn't Super Mario Bros. 2. This is Super Mario Bros. 1.5. But there was already two other Super Mario Bros. 1.5s, being the Versus arcade machines and Super Mario Bros. Special. There wasn't any need for this to be its own thing. I would have understood it if it was an expansion to the original game. But it isn't. It calls itself the sequel to this. What the hell is this?
Even the bosses are the same. Where you fight
Bowser
and hit the axe on the other side, everything is just the same thing, with more and more ridiculous jumps and tricks that you would never figure out without googling it, which obviously wasn't a thing when this game came out. I will say the trampolines in 2-1 were quite fun to use, and the wind in the future levels also adds a unique twist to the Mario formula. But you can only take so much when comparing it to the original, as it's just the same thing. World 2.2 finally gives us something different by adding invisible blocks that you would never figure out how to use, so I guess that's interesting. This game feels like a waste of time, but we're not even close to the amount of time that it wastes. World 3 follows the same shtick as World 3 of the original, being snowy levels with just a lot of grey. With 3-1, you have to start thinking about the way you're going to use Mario's momentum to jump over obstacles, instead of just jumping. Which, yes, adds a bit of difference between the two games, but really it's just stupid. World 3.2 takes on what World 2.2 should have been, being the first underwater level of the bunch, and it feels so similar to the original game's 2.2 that I wouldn't be shocked if you mix the two up. They're practically exactly the same thing, with no difference between the two. I guess it's Paratroopers and Koopa Troopers for some reason, but everything else is just the same thing. World 3.3 has some hard jumps, and World 3.4 has you fight
Bowser
following a specific pattern that you were supposed to follow. World 4 does more of the same when compared to the original, and World 5 follows suit, with some stupid puzzles and some stupid platforming. See, in World 5.1 there's a section of the level where you need to create an invisible block. However, it's difficult to gain enough momentum to jump on top of the block, as you can't make the screen go back after you go forward, making it insanely easy to get soft-locked and needing the Nintendo Switch Rewind feature. World 5.3 does more of the same, and we start to get to repeating levels just like we did in the original game. And by the time you get to the end of World 6, you just get annoyed. Every single level just feels like a repeat of what you've already done, whether you've played the original game or not.
It's even hard to joke about it. It's a nothing game.
This game is hated by the masses. So much in fact that people would rather take their version of Super Mario Bros. 2, which isn't even a Mario game, over whatever the hell this monstrosity is. It's just a bad game that's difficult and completely ruins all enjoyment you had with the original game. Don't get me started on World 7.1. What a poorly designed level. The wind makes it annoying, the amount of piranha plants and the random guessing you have to do to work out how this game works is just outstanding. It's not a fun game whatsoever. World 7-4 just feels like an endless maze even though it's a level you've already played before, which finally brings you to World 8. The one we've all been waiting for. The finale of the game.
Right?
World 8 is the worst collection of Mario levels I have ever witnessed. The amount of utterly ridiculous platforming, timing, RNG, and more just makes this world one of the worst things I have ever played. How are you meant to figure out you need to jump on this paratrooper to jump over this huge gap? The Hammer Bros, my god, you thought you hated them before? In this game, they just feel so much more jumpy and they are everywhere. World 8 2 brings back the wonderful autumn levels from Super Mario Bros. Special and just makes a harder version of World 8 3 from the original game. It even gets worse when you find out that this level is a puzzle level and the only real ending is to jump on a brick that reveals a find that no one would ever find. It took me so long to figure out what to do in this level, it just seems like an endless puzzle. How would any person be able to figure out what the hell to do in this level without looking it up?
And look, I understand wanting to make a challenging game. We all want a game to, be hard and give us a challenge. But when it's stupidly hard compared to the other Mario games you've made, you start to question, what the hell is this game?
When you finally figure out what you're supposed to do, you're greeted to what I consider to be the best part of the game. World 8 3 is such a unique level. It's stupidly hard, yes, but the level has you platforming across the clouds, which I think is the coolest idea in the entire game. Having sky levels like this wasn't really a thing at this point in Mario's life, so having it here just feels unique. It feels different. Why couldn't more levels be like this? Of course, I hate this level due to how impossible it is, but I like Nintendo's creativity here. Well done. World 8 4 is where things go from hard to annoying. World 8 4 is an endless puzzle that goes on forever that you have to make sure you aren't wasting time. There's several pipes to go into, and if you stuff up once, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of the level. What's worse is that sometimes the puzzle parts of this level don't work correctly, so you're stuck wondering what you did wrong. I never want to have to play this game again. It's the most unfun level in the entire game. It took me so many tries to figure out what to do, and I just never want to experience this hell ever again. It's the worst pain in the butt I've ever felt.
And it currently hurts to sit!
So this level must be awful. This level gives you no time to complete it, with me having under 20 seconds to beat the entire final room of the stage. You also have to deal with two Bowsers. No, one of them isn't one of those
Bowsers?
Is instead Bowser's brother.
Don't ask.
But when you finally beat the real Bowser, you're brought to a door, which leads to Peach, where they stuff up how the sprites look, because the black in the sprites is actually the background and not the sprites itself, so when they change the background to blue, it actually stuffs everything up. You'd think that's the end of the game. You really would. Well, let me warn you, it's only just the beginning. After completing World 8, you're brought to World 9.
No!
But don't worry, it's not actually that hard. Each level is just some sort of little bonus thing that mostly has you swimming in the overworld. Bowser's brother returns, and the final stage is just some Japanese characters. Quite a sweet little ending that you only unlock if you don't use any warp zones. So that's Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. It's an annoying game with even more annoying levels, but only having 9 worlds of 4 levels, that isn't so bad. Oh god.
There's 4 more worlds?!
That's right. After you complete the entire game 8 times in a row without using warp zones, you unlock worlds A, B, C, and D. That's right, 8 times. You have to play this awful game 8 times to unlock the bonus worlds. And what are the bonus worlds? They're just harder versions of other levels alongside some original levels that are just as hard. World D makes this whole Bowser thing even more confusing, with Bowser's brother returning, only to be a fake
Bowser's brother,
followed by another
Bowser,
at the end of the level. But that's different again when you play the Super Mario All-Stars version, where the two of them are replaced by the original versions of the two. Why is it different? I don't know. Nintendo just wanted to be funny. How could you do this, Nintendo? What the hell are you thinking? What the hell is this game?
Super Mario Bros. 2, otherwise known as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, is the worst Mario game I have ever played. It's really hard for no reason, it's almost impossible to complete, and it's just one of the worst things ever made. But at least it's an actual Mario game. Unlike this sucker!